Special Finance Committee meeting November 29th, 2022.
I will call the Special Finance Committee meeting to order at 6 p.m. I'm sorry, used to 7 p.m. 6 p.m. Members Mark McKeever, Kevin Myers, Terry Spiegel, and myself chair. I don't know if anyone else, well, we all have an agenda here, but we're going to do it a little bit different. I asked the mayor, he has a presentation, I'm going to have him do that first. That way, then if you guys have any questions to us or the mayor, then you can ask them all at once. I'm going to have the mayor speak first, then I'm going to have the committee, we're all going to give our view on it so that you guys know how we feel, so you don't come up here and say, well, you guys this and you guys that, which we hear a lot, but there's a lot, we're on your side too, so, and we're on his side too, so, so that's going to be the order. So first the mayor, then the committee, and then we will give you your turn to speak, okay? All right, take it away, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know we kind of put these guys in a bad position, and I, certainly apologize for that. But we've kind of started earlier in the year telling you a little bit about what's going on and leading to some of the things leading to it. And we probably should have given you guys all more information to let you know. So maybe you may feel differently about it than you may not. Can everybody see the TV here? So this tells you about some of the income tax issues that are facing us. Just to give you like a real brief, we collect 2% of your income, so every $100 we get $2. $1 goes to general government, which is can go to safety forces, it can go to law, it can go to salaries, all those types of things, and then half of it another half goes to safety forces, and then the remaining half just goes to the streets. We expect to, on that 2% income tax, to raise about $6.4 million next year. Okay? Then we have what's called enterprise funds. So enterprise funds are water, sewer, solid waste, and stormwater. You get a bill for that every month. They're separate and they cannot be moved between those funds, and they cannot be moved to the general fund or streets or safety forces. It's just for those funds, and they're all user fees. So when you sign up for water, that money that we collect in water has to go to pay for providing water, and that's all it can be used for. Okay, John. What we don't receive, a lot of people think we do receive this. We receive zero sales tax revenue. The sales tax revenue in the county is about. No, it's a lot more than that. Yeah. 7%. It's about, no, I know, but I'm talking about the total revenue. I think it's like $7.5 million a year. $7.5 million a year. And that's used for the sheriff's department, county government, health department, county roads, all those things. City doesn't get any of those. None of the cities get those funds, or the villages. Property taxes are also collected by the county, and they're used for the same expenses. I think that's around, if I remember, around $10 million. I've got the figure. I should have brought it, but it's not that important. But we receive about $450,000 a year out of the property taxes that are collected in Bucyrus. We get a small portion of that, and we use that primarily for our contribution to the Crawford County Health Department, which we have every year. So there's issues that are affecting our revenue, and we've touched on those things. And interrupt me if you guys have any questions. Population has been dropping for 20 years. So not only that, we're aging. We have a lot of retirees. Retirees do not pay income tax. We have more residents are working outside the city. Those residents pay taxes where they work, and then we give them up to a 2% credit. So if you pay 2% in Mansfield or Marion, that's all that money goes there, and nothing is owed here. If you pay 1% in Upper Sandusky, you would be paying their 1%, and then the 1% would go to us. We also lost state legislature about 10 years ago now, eliminated the estate tax, which was a fairly reliable form of income for the city for many years. And they also reduced, all but eliminated what's called local government funds. We used to call it revenue sharing. Those are funds that were given back to the cities, and that was, anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000. So over 10 years, you can see the last 10 years what's happened to our budget. It could be $3 million or $6-7 million. The other issue is because of some of those things, we haven't kept up with inflation, and so we're taking in about, let's say, roughly $6.5 million on revenue on our 2% income tax. And if we would have kept up inflation, we would be well over $8 million now. So just some of the issues we have. And then we've got some other issues that are affecting our expenses and what we're able to spend. It's no secret that GE was a blow to the community. We're losing, their withholding was around $300,000. And Joyce, if you got any other figures that are wrong, just please interrupt me. That was about $300,000, which is about roughly 4% of our income tax base, not including their corporate checks, which we received a large one last year. Another big issue is it's been unfortunate here due to COVID. We've had to give a lot of refunds, and now we're going to lose revenue for people that are working from home, which the legislature or even the state courts said that we are not allowed to collect money from those folks, even though their headquarters may be in here. And that was about $150,000 this year. So that's another significant issue of things that's going to affect what we can spend. Safety forces, the two chiefs are here tonight, and these guys are, in the most challenging times. I'm not going to speak for them, but if they'll speak later if they want to, they're in the most challenging times for retaining safety forces right now. We've lost people to other communities, both forces. Just they pay a lot more than we do. Some of those towns we'll never be able to compete against, but we still want to compete against the towns that are within a 30 or more area, 30 or more mile radius from here. So the other issue, there's a big issue, a couple big issues. We got fire equipment that's going to be needed. The ambulances are getting a lot of work. We have 2 new ambulances, and they're busy, and they don't last forever. And we're going to need another ladder truck. That's, I think, over 5 years, Chief, is that right? Or 7 years, somewhere around there?
Depends.
Yeah, it depends, okay. Yeah, they make them go as long as they can, and then those are millions of dollars. And then the engine we just bought this year, going to need new, and that was over $600,000. I'm sure it's up since then. Long before we got here, the contracts had been negotiated for retirees. We were paid health, sick pay, and vacation, and the buyouts were pretty lucrative. That's something that Jeff and I have been negotiating down over the last several contracts, and you'll see the benefits of that. And when the newer guys that have been hired in the last 8 years retire, but the other ones, of course, were grandfathered into that. So it's going to cost us about $1 million over the next 5 years. Now, some ways that we can. Okay, so there you go. Thanks, John. So people say, well, let's cut some expenses and things. We've looked at everything. We run a tight ship. When safety forces are like 75 or 80% of your budget, and it's a little bit tough to cut other places, but we do have other expenses that we're reducing for next year. We're building maintenance. I think that was about $120,000. But we got to make sure that we have some money in that for repair in case we have something go wrong. We're not going to be hiring a part-time worker in All Miller Park or any of the parks for next year. That'll save us about $10,000. And if we have to, the only way you really can reduce short-term expenses is by layoffs. And when I say short-term, we're self-insured. So if like in your business, if you lay somebody off, you know, you go on the insurance, right? But not with the city, because we're self-insured for 26 weeks. So it takes us 26 weeks to realize any savings, which is half a year, obviously. But we don't want to lay anybody off. We really don't want to, because we're busy. The last thing we want to do right now, especially in safety forces, is reduce the services, because the people that live here are going to suffer. There's more in the next. Can you go to the next one, John? There's some things that we can do short term, and we could consider. Although we brought this up when COVID started and it didn't get passed, but because of COVID, we thought now is a good time, if, in case we got our departments wiped out with COVID, let's see if we can, get some part-timers in here temporarily. Get filled. Now what that does is saves you overtime. And that's an idea that should be looked at one more time by City Council. It's the same at the fire department. We are all our staff, our professional staff, and they're doing one heck of a job over there. They're FD and they're medics also. They're trained both. So now that's another way you could do it, is just hire medics. That would help reduce some overtime costs, whether they're part-time or full-time. And those are things that the council have to decide. And so the best way we could cut expenses immediately is just cut minimum staffing. We don't want to do that, because people are going to be waiting for, if we've got 2 ambulances out and we got 4 guys on duty, it's, the time that you might have a third call, they're going to be waiting until somebody comes back. So there's also we've talked about, floated this idea of bringing a private EMS service to use our North Fire Station as our backup. All right, so that would cost us some revenue. The numbers have to, kind of balance out, but would the loss in revenue be offset by the reduction in overtime? That's pretty large right now. So, you want to go to the next one, John? A couple more things. We've approached the county commissioners. County commissioners they have a tough job too. I mean, they've got a lot of people to be responsible for. One thing they do benefit from that we don't is their revenue has increased, the property taxes substantially, as well as their sales taxes. So we've approached the county commissioners about having a county-wide dispatch service, as is done in Marion County and I don't know how many other counties across the state. That would be a possibility, and they're open for discussion on that. Those are longer term things. And also, down the line, many counties our size have a county-wide fire and EMS service. So we have we have 3 with Crestline, and we have Galleon and Bucyrus all have fire and EMS, and then the townships do too. So there's a lot of redundancy there. So a possibility, but the lead would have to come from the county commissioners. So, so the next one, now the other, talking about short-term and long-term revenue increases option. The short-term revenue option is, as you folks know, we've talked about, and it's what you're here to talk about, is reducing the tax credit that's allowed for out-of-town workers. Our income tax department said we lose about $845,000 a year based on 2020 income by giving credit. And I think there's around 25% of all returns had some credit. Now, some of the returns may have more than 2 people working out of town. So, but let's say at least 25% of our workers now work out of town, which is just a fact of life. We can't change that right now. Every community in our area has some form of reduced credit. So Galleon does, Crestline does, New Washington, Mansfield, Marion. I think Upper is 0, but they have a 1%. So plus Astoria zero. I think Tiffin's the only other one that doesn't. So what happens is those tax dollars go to those other cities and help fund their safety forces and government. So it puts us at a kind of a disadvantage. Okay, the next one, John. We've talked about, we made a presentation, had our income tax authority called RETA, and I know there's other ones in the state, make a presentation back in 2015 maybe. At that time, City Council was not in favor of a tax authority. They have some ability to find the people that are living in your community, that are working in your community, that are paying, so they have some things that, even though our auditor and our income tax department does a wonderful job, they have some other tools. And I know Galleon has RETA, Crestline, but there's a couple hundred cities in the state that do. So most of those cities have about a 5 to 10% revenue increase over the first few years. I think it takes a few years. That's why I said it's a little bit of a longer option. So, but it is a viable option. And I know you mentioned it, Dan, and we had reached out to them. We were at Ohio Municipal League with Joyce and I about coming to make a presentation. So we want to have them come and speak in January, so you can ask the questions. So we also talked about annexation, which I'm in favor of that. We are sending letters out this week to all the people that can be eligible for annexation, and see what they feel like, if they're interested in being annexed, and then it's easier if they're interested in being annexed. If they're not, I mean, there's different. Law director can tell you there's lots of different ways to be annexed, but there's legal considerations, there's negotiations with the townships, and then you can't pick and choose. I mean, you've got to annex all or none. You can't say you're not going to be annexed. You are, you can't pick one business and not. So that's illegal to do that. So those are things to consider. We're certainly interested in that, but it could be a year, it could be several years for that. But it's still something that I know you brought up many times, and it's certainly got some merit to look into. A couple other ways you can do it: additional income tax levy. 2% is about average in the state. Most cities our size and our median income level are around 2%. Some of them are a little higher, 2.25, even as much as 2.5. But those are the rarities. It's mostly in the 2% range. So if you're coming in with an additional levy, that's something you'll have to decide and see if you think that has merit too. So for every 0.5%, you're going to bring in roughly $1.7 million roughly at today's rates, $1.6 million, somewhere in that, depending on how next year shakes out. There's also, one more, John, go back. Safety forces equipment. The city have had a levy for equipment for many years, and that money is gone now. And that was to buy was that to buy a new ladder truck, Chief?
Yeah, last time, yes.
Okay, and I think that's certainly a viable option too. I think that has some merit too. So that would be a property tax, so everybody would pay on that. I mean, if you're going to do it the same way. So there's options here, and you guys are going to have to kind of, I know you're in a bad way. I know nobody wants to make enemies, and certainly have some responsibility when you run for these positions you don't think you're going to have to make tough decisions. I know, because when I took over as mayor, I had no idea what I was getting into. I can tell you that right now. And it's been challenging, especially now, where I have just a year to go. And I think we, and Joyce and I and Jeff, we want to make sure we leave the city fiscally sound, not heading towards fiscal emergency like some of our neighboring cities have been into. So, and the only way you're going to get there is by, making tougher decisions. You may have other ideas too, which you can discuss. when it comes, I know when I interviewed for the job, and I told the committee that I think population was the key. I mean, we got to stop the drain in population, and even though the rate of growth, the rate of decline has slowed, we're still losing some population, and we've got to figure a way to change that. One of the ways is to get more housing. You know, we've talked about doing infrastructure, investing in infrastructure, putting some roads in. You know, we've talked about how expensive that's going to be and the long payoff that is. But I think that's something we need to do, look long-term here, 5-10 years to see for people. We don't have a whole lot of houses for sale. And we've torn down some houses that were, every time we tore a house down, we had to do it, but, we lost a place for residents and for utility customers. We made an announcement today about IB Tech adding 70 jobs. And we made several announcements here, Diamond Wipes in the last couple of weeks that are good. I think that investment, small investment that we make in economic development is paying off. But those are all things that are going to take time. I think people like living here. I like living here. I moved back here after being gone 20 years. This is it's not supposed to say this is a special place. It is. It's got a lot of good people. It's got a lot of good organizations that make this place. The city government cannot do everything. We can't. All we can do is make the ground fertile for growth and for growth in business, and we're working with the schools and other businesses and do the best we can to bring these jobs here. An increase in tax revenue is needed, So if we don't increase the tax revenue some way immediately, we're going to have to reduce the services. I know the people that work out of town and they're going to talk tonight. And, I'm not. I know you're looking. If you make, I'm just going to throw this number out there. If you make $40,000 a year, and the income tax credit is reduced in half, that's about a little over $1 a day. Is what that would cost that person. So if you make $80,000, it would be $2 a day. And those are things that when the people are going to be the most affected by it. I know there's probably a significant portion of those people that are willing to pay some because they want to have that police be able to come to answer that call in the ambulance quickly. So there's going to be some sacrifice, and I don't know other way if that is what you vote on, any other way to say it except it's going to be a sacrifice. So, but if you guys have any questions, I would be happy to answer those. And thank you for taking time. And I thought we should have probably done this a few months ago to let everybody know a little bit more about how the city operates. And so, any questions? Thank you.
Well, Robert, can you hold that till we're going to go around here, and then you can be first at the podium, okay? All right, so I wanted the mayor to give his presentation so that it would answer or give you guys questions to ask. So now, well, I guess he asked us if we had any questions, but I would like to kind of go around with the committee and let our visitors know, how we, I guess, feel. If you want, you can say no comment if you want. I don't care. Terry, would you?
Sure.
Joyce?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Late. I was in another one.
Oh, okay. She may have some information we need.
I do have some information here that I will hand out, and I know this is something that I'd actually received a message from Aaron about, and I got a chance to work on it this afternoon. It's not fancy. It's not on a fancy spreadsheet, but it shows you what the cost of police, fire, and ambulance has been since 2017 through this year. And you will see by looking at it as the mayor had said, if you look back at 2017 and the total clear out to the right, it was about 4.1 million. And when you get to 2022, year-to-date right now, we're at almost 4.7 million. And with the estimated expenses in December, we're going to be at 5.2 million in expenses this year. This is not. This does not include the fire truck that we're paying for right now. This is strictly the department's expenses, and these are actual expenses each year, not the budget numbers, but the actual expenses. And this does not include the 2 new ambulances because they're not taking grant money, but they're going to have to be replaced at some point. I have to say, you know, I've been at this for 23 years, and I've never seen a budget this tough, as we're going through right now, and the way expenses have spiked. And I know it's true for everyone, but you know, we have a lot of people who also live outside of town and work in town and are working for our services. And they're also paying for services in their townships, whether it's for their county roads, their fire services, and some of them have their own ambulance services. And, you know, everyone needs to have some skin in the game. And I know it's not an easy decision, but I don't want to see our police and our ambulance services go downhill because we're not supporting them. I had to call an ambulance to my house a couple weeks ago, and I truly appreciate the service that I got. And it's like an insurance policy. We all pay car insurance, house insurance, and we may not use it. But if you need it, you want it to be there. And I guess that's all I can really say about that right now.
Well, thanks, Joyce. Thanks for getting these numbers so we'll look these over and see what we think. So Terry, do you have anything to add? You know, we've been going through this process for a while. I just want each of us to kind of say how we feel. So.
Well, my opinion is, I hate to see anybody pay more taxes, because I surely wouldn't, but I also don't want to see fire department or police department laid off. We cannot afford to do that in this county with the situation that happened 2 weeks ago on Veterans Day. Who knows what could have happened? We could have been down 2 more officers at that point. But we're luckily, and they handled it very well. And that just shows how good a training that these officers are getting. And then with that training, they're leaving for someplace else to get more money. And you can't blame every one of them for doing that. I would do it if I had a chance. So the tax credit is something that I see we're going to have to probably do at least for a little while until we get the other stuff rounded up, annexation, or possibly a tax increase of some kind. So that's my opinion on it.
Mark, you got any say in this? Anything you want to add?
Well, the figures that Joyce just gave us, it shows that since 2017, we went up approximately $1.1 million in expenses on just 2 departments. Of course, we did add ambulance, so that did add a substantial amount increase once we added them. But they are generating revenue back in.
Do we know what our year-to-date billing collections have been for EMS? Roughly?
Year-to-date, we budgeted for $400,000.
I knew what we budgeted. Do you know how far over?
The current 12-month period has collected, the billing company has collected $460,000. There's a 6.5% fee that's part of that. So that's the 12-month.
Okay. And I understand about, the tax credit. My wife worked out of town until about 8 months ago. She's not working, but, she had to pay Marion income tax. I understand paying 2 cities of income tax. I talked to the auditor and asked about if we were to do a property tax. The auditor gave me the figure. The value inside the city limits of residential, commercial, and public utility properties values at $182,392,880. Now that's at the 35% tax rate that we pay on. That's 65% lower than what the actual values are. Like your house, let's say it's $100,000, you're only paying tax on $35,000. If we were to do a 1 mil, it would generate $182,000. If we were to, as you see, we increased our police and fire expenses have increased 1.1 million. If we do a 5 mil property tax, it would generate approximately $911,960. That's just multiplying that 182,000 by 5, and I understand that's taxing everybody. I mean, that's taxing those who are retired on a fixed income. That's taxing those of us who are currently working, who, it would raise your property taxes. I pay my mortgage, and my mortgage pays property taxes. I don't look at it. I get the statement, but I just don't look at it. I can't tell you how much I'm paying. I know some people are paying a good amount of money. I just talked to another constituent while I was in Marion waiting before I had to come back here, and I asked them about income tax credit, property tax, and they're up. They don't know which way would be best. They said they don't want to try. They don't have the answer, and they don't want to be the one to try to make the decision on should we take the tax credit away or increase property taxes or a little bit of both. What should we do? We need your input because we got to do something. Otherwise, we're going to have to make cuts, and unfortunately, it's going to affect the police and fire the hardest. It's going to hit them the hardest first. It's still going to affect the street department, the wastewater. It's going to affect all the employees that work for the city. But like the mayor has said, and as what our Chief Ossenheimer has said, you could go to Worthington and make $100,000 being a patrolman. That's a 45-minute drive under ideal conditions. You can go to Delaware and make $15 more an hour. We can't. I'm just stating police. And I understand other.
That officers are leaving the community to go places for higher wages. What do you think the citizens of Bucyrus that are leaving the city are doing? We are going to where the wages are higher.
Melanie, let me finish. I understand what you're saying.
That contradicts, I mean, you're losing officers due to pay. Why do you think that the citizens of Bucyrus are leaving the city to work? Pay.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
But I mean, I think that you have to look at that. I mean, that's why they're leaving.
But I
That's why you're
mean,
losing officers.
I'm just stating, in order for us to be able to keep them, we have to increase the pay somehow. We just did, we can't go any higher than what we just did. And that's not going to be enough to entice new, correct me wrong if I'm wrong, Chief Ossenheimer, would that, what we're offering is still making it hard for you to even entice somebody to come here?
Yeah, we just finished an application process. We had 5 people apply for patrol officer job.
Okay, well, that's good, that's good news.
That's what we've been getting the last couple of years.
So, you know, we're asking for your input too. I don't know what the answer is here. I'm not trying to throw all the burden onto those who work outside the city. And also, is property tax going to be the answer, because that's going to burden the senior citizens who are on some of them are on a very fixed income that, you know, yeah, it might be $60 a month more, but that's $60 that they didn't have. I know how expensive it's getting for just us who are working. So we need your input. We need to find a solution, and that's what I have at the moment.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark. Kevin, you have anything to add?
Yeah, first I want to say thanks for letting us have the opportunity to speak, because a lot of
Okay.
times we don't get that opportunity to kind of state how we feel on some things, so I appreciate that opportunity. Mayor, I want to thank you for your presentation. You know, sometimes it seems like we butt heads with the administration over certain things, and this is probably going to be one of those cases too. But it was nice to see all that information put together in one and explained in a way that people needed to hear, so thanks for the work you did on that. Mayor, you're not wrong. Population is our biggest problem. We need to find a way to get more people to live here. And I know there's several different mindsets on how to do that, and that's a long-term goal. I will say that I feel like we're getting more money, more return out of our investment with the partnership right now than we ever have. I think that the addition of David Zach to that job has been phenomenal. He is, you know, we hear a lot of times people, you know, want to say we need more jobs here. We need to do something more to get more jobs here. And that guy's busting his tail and making some progress finally. And I see that that's going to continue. You know, a lot of talk about the Intel plant going in. I know they're looking hard to see, well, who services the Intel people? Those are the people we're looking at to try to get those jobs, if not here, closer to here, to where maybe even if they go to Marion, we want some of those people to live here. So I know they're actively pursuing that, not just for the jobs to come here, but also housing for those people as well. That stuff is being looked at, and so when a lot of times the public makes comments that, you know, we need to do something, a lot is being done. I think it's fair to know that. As far as the credit reduction goes, the only way I would ever be in favor of it would be with a couple of stipulations. Number one, it needs to be temporary for 1 year for right now, but with a plan in place. And that plan in place, in my opinion, needs to be, we need to decide whether we're going to look at an income tax or a property tax. Either way, I believe that should not be a permanent tax. That should be a renewable 3 or 5 year tax, so that we earn the right to keep asking for that. I believe that needs to all go to the safety forces, period, nowhere else. You know, we need to decide which one of those is the better option. If I had to make a decision today, I think property tax is probably where I stand, but I don't know that I am ready to make that decision. I want to research it and figure out what's going to be the better option. We talked about vehicle replacement, the vehicles need replaced. One of the things I've been wanting to do since I came on council, we have a line item to replace garbage trucks. We should have a line item for putting money aside every year to replace every vehicle. We know what the lifespan of a garbage truck is. We know what the lifespan of a plow truck. We know what the lifespan of a fire truck is. We should be planning ahead and setting some money aside. And I know you say there's only so many dollars to go around. I get it, but we need a plan for this. As far as EMS, unfortunately, I'm never going to back your plan to bring private EMS back. I just think that is not a viable option. We've come too far, and we can't take that step backwards. Talking about the North End Fire Station, if that's not going to be utilized by our fire department, let's sell the thing. Why are we sitting on it? That's something we talked about several months ago, and we were told to sit here and stand by and wait for something, and I'm still waiting to hear what we're going to do with that. As far as a countywide EMS and fire service, that's something that the commissioners, and we all looked at that before we did what we were doing here. Galleon was not willing to commit to that because of the way their funding was. They had a police and fire levy together. They would have to abandon that levy, and so that came to a screeching halt, and they weren't willing to look at that. We couldn't have a countywide system and carve out Galleon. It would have to be a district similar to what the old ambulance district was, and that became not a viable option. So that's something that's already been looked at. As far as Rita, you mentioned, I'm in favor of that. I think that's something I'm anxious to hear them come in and give us a presentation. Annexation, I think that's absolutely something that I wish we'd have done better 10, 15, 20 years ago, because we'd be already to that 13-year period would be come and gone. We'd be doing okay there. So that's kind of my take on things.
Okay, well, thanks, Kevin. So I'll just say, I guess, I'm not in favor of doing away with the tax credit unless we've exhausted all of our options and we have a plan to move forward with that. Mark just mentioned that we can get money from a levy that would probably take care of most of that. Most of what we need, and we talk about annexation, and it's not just going out, and I don't know, maybe you guys don't understand. I'm not saying go out and ask all these people if they want to annex. I'm saying, listen, we're hurting. We're going to have to start cutting services. Are we going to cut your services? Are we going to cut your services? You're not paying taxes. You're not paying income taxes. Where are we going to cut services first? I mean, I'm not saying go out and blackmail them, but listen, they've been, there's 100 residents, 20 businesses that have been doing this for decades. And it's time, it's time they put some skin in the game, as they say. And I could go on and on. I think I've mentioned most everything that, how I feel, but I think, and I've been trying to just ask for a plan that says, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this, and this is going to help us for the next 5, 10 years. And I still haven't seen it. All I see is, let's take away the tax credit. Let's take away the tax credit. None of the rest of that is done. And no offense, Mayor, but you say, if you guys want to do a levy, that's fine. If you guys want to do that. But I think as the head of the city, I was thinking that was kind of your position to come up with you do the budget every year. Wouldn't you come up with a levy between you guys? Don't you guys do that? If we do a levy for something, but I guess if council has to do it, we'll have to sit down and figure out how to do it. So I guess that's my spiel on things. I'm going to open things up to public participation, and I promised Robert he could go first.
Robert Taylor, 411 Plymouth Street. First, I have a question for the mayor. Where's the money from the billing, the $430,000 for the ambulance? Where's that going? Is that going back to the safety forces? Is it going back to the fire department?
It goes into the general fund.
Why is that?
And then let me finish. And then it goes into pay for the safety forces. Joyce would be the better one to ask there. So she tells you.
So it's not law that it's mandatory, because if it goes to the general fund, that opens it up for everybody, right? You can spend it any way you want. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
it goes right to the fire budget for ambulance.
I understand what you're.
Talking about the 470.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that you're saying that's where it went. Okay, I'm not disputing that's where it went. I'm asking, is that law? Does it have to go there?
Yes.
Okay, there's legislation that states that.
Well, the state auditor told me I could not create a separate fund for that. It had to run through the general fund because that's where the majority of the safety forces budget is.
Okay,
The
All right.
safety forces levy
Right.
is in addition
Okay.
to the general fund. And
Okay.
because it's a levy, it does go to a separate fund.
right,
But this is subsidies and charges for services that
Right.
has to go to the general fund.
okay. But, so, every penny that's billed and collected is accounted for and goes back to the fire department?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for
I
answering
have
the question.
I have separate revenue lines to track that money as it comes in.
Thank you.
And I've also tracked the expense of the additional 6 firefighters that we hired.
Yes, ma'am.
And actually, their expenses have exceeded what we've brought in.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people you're billing probably aren't gonna pay, so.
Robert, are you asking that, were you thinking that that money was used for other things?
No, I was not insinuating that at all,
It was, okay.
Mr. Mayor. I was asking if it was law that it had to be.
Okay.
Because I was just going to say that it should be.
Okay.
So, I guess next I would like to address this, and this is not disputing that the cops are leaving for money. That's not the only reason they're leaving. I've talked to several of the gentlemen that have left. That's not the only reason they left. Now, does money matter? Sure, it does. But that's not the only reason. So to just use that argument is asinine to me, because it's not the only reason they left. And you've done exit interviews. Jeff Wagner sat in on exit interviews. That's not the only reason these guys left. So they might be disgruntled, I don't know, but that's not the only reason. Secondly, I am in favor of reducing the tax if it's going to keep us from property tax that's going to affect retired people and senior citizens who have already paid their dues over the years. I mean, it's a very valid point. These people are on fixed incomes. Things are already tight. Building back better, ain't building much back better, so everybody's paying more money for everything. They definitely can't afford it. So if it's gonna cost me a couple more $100 a year and save them, I'm okay with that. But that's only targeting the 25% out-of-town workers. If you're gonna do that, then you also need to, in conjunction, just raise the income tax altogether, whether it's 0.25% or whatever number you can come up with. Just do it all. Do it all at once, so everybody's feeling this, instead of just saying, because that's a lot of the problem here is we've been told several times that we don't have skin in the game, or we're not paying our fair share, or we're not doing this. Now listen, if you want to get an opt-out program going, I won't call the fire department or the cops ever to my house unless they're coming up to hang out for a party that I'm having. I don't need them. I don't need them to come up and rescue me and save me. Fire department, I might. I do have fire extinguishers, but I'll sign an opt-out if you guys think I'm not paying my fair share. And that's a little bit absurd to hear that from public officials, from people who are paying taxes. But you definitely should go about it on a couple different avenues, not just target one demographic. Annexation is definitely a good idea. Dan's brought that up several times, and this is the first time I've heard anyone else talk about it. And Mr. Mayor, you're the first person I've heard talk about cutting costs. And I appreciate that. That's one of the main things we need to look at here. And I know it's very minuscule, it's very minute. We don't need a cop at every city council meeting. It's overtime. It's hourly. He makes hours on his retirement. I understand. We all want to make money. That's unnecessary. Change the law to where citizens can conceal carry in here and you don't have anything to worry about. It's the state allows it. It's your policy here that prevents it. We don't need to spend money for this gentleman to sit here. That's just my opinion. I'm sure nothing will happen with it, but every dollar counts when you're in a tight budget. Other than that, I got nothing else to say. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Robert. He'd like.
Yeah,
he'd
one
like
of
to
the
make a
things, when
point.
you brought up a point, Robert, and Joyce, you'd mentioned it earlier, I just wanted to clarify something. You know, when you said you called the squad to come to your house, if we had, back when we had a private ambulance service, you would have gotten a bill above and beyond what your insurance would have paid, and if you didn't pay that bill, you get sent to collections. We don't do that. We take assignment from what the insurance pays, and so with our tax dollars, and so I guess the point I'm trying to make is if we have to raise our taxes even slightly more, you know, that's going towards that. Your insurance is gonna pay for that ambulance, but not above and beyond that. You're not gonna get, you know, it's called soft billing. You're not gonna get taken to collections and have to pay. So when you made the comment about, you know, people aren't paying their bill, it's not set up that way under the government EMS structure the way it is under a private ambulance service.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, if we raise the income tax, that has to be voted on. By the people. Yeah, okay.
Okay, do we have anyone else who would like to speak tonight?
Lisa Allsett, 1323 North Sandusky. I voted to reduce the tax credit last time. Please think really long and hard about raising people's property taxes because I know a lot of seniors cannot afford it. I have no problem paying more than my neighbor for city services. What I have a problem with is maybe how it's managed. And I don't mean that by book work. You're saying that it's for the police and fire. It's for the police and fire. I understand that. They're leaving town for the same reason I left town. Nobody leaves town for $40,000 a year anymore. That $1.40 a day is a joke. I pay $2,400 a year for gas. You're wanting me to pay another $1,200 a year for taxes, which I already pay. And I probably pay on average about $400 a year more for water because I live here in this town. Now I could rent my house because he says that there's a lack of rental properties, and I can go live in my son's house in Mansfield and save 40 hours a month of drive time. I don't have a problem paying extra. I just want to make sure that my extra goes toward the police and the fire. Is the fire department receiving the money that we used to pay for the private ambulance service on top of the money that they're earning from running the ambulance service now?
That was got included in the budget, yes.
I would like to make a public records request that I get to see the expenses that have been paid out under $50,000 for the last year that council isn't aware of, that leaves and isn't stamped or voted on. I'm just saying, I'm curious. I just don't want to see our seniors suffer. If we're worried about population, this may cause people to leave. I mean, I don't make a ton of money, but when I start adding up, it starts looking better and better to go live over there and not do that drive. My kids aren't in school anymore. I mean, I have no reason to stay here. And if people do leave, there's going to be water customers that you're going to lose and property taxes you're going to lose and more vacant lots. I have no problem voting for a 2.25% income tax raise, which, like you said, it would have to be voted on. What's that figure? I asked Kelly Schimpf at the last meeting if I told her I'd be interested in having that figure. Has any one of you asked for that figure?
You just had, what was it? What did you say? You said
2.25% would raise how
1.7?
much?
Well, we already have 2%.
Yeah, I
So you're
know.
talking about 0.25%?
I'm saying raise all city tax to 2.25, leave the credit the same, and how
Bring in
much?
roughly $800,000.
The same as it would to double tax us?
That's in the minutes from the November 3rd meeting. Whenever you asked it,
Yes?
the attachments
next
under
meeting?
it. Well, the attachments with the minutes.
Oh, I didn't know she put that in there.
No,
Okay,
I made sure it
good.
was in there.
So that's going to raise the exact same amount of money as it would to double tax the 1,700 families that work out of town? Okay, I wanted to be clear on that.
Yes.
You got to remember, I'm sorry, the income tax needs to be voted on,
Right.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the
And you don't think
Credit,
these
and-
1,700 families would
and-
vote
and-
for it?
And then the other part is property, I'm not sure everybody understands that property taxes have to be voted on also.
Right.
And then property taxes wouldn't start bringing in revenue, it's collected in arrears, 6 months in arrears. So you probably will be looking at the end of '24 before we'd start to get any of that revenue. So just to give you the heads up on that.
But if we don't do anything, we'll get nothing
Right.
in '24. We do something now, we can get something into, yeah, that's my point. My point is, we
And in my
do something now.
experience, I feel like the older generation maybe is more diligent about voting. So property taxes probably aren't going to give you any, nobody's going to vote for that. The elderly are the ones that vote, I mean, for the most part. I have no problem paying more city income tax. I just want to make sure that it's spent appropriately and that it goes to the police and fire. I understand them leaving for more money. I left 28 and a half years ago for more money. It isn't $1.40 a day or whatever. I'm probably looking at $1,200 more a year. That's $100 a month. That's a lot of money. That's all I got.
Thanks, Lisa. Oh, here we go.
Melanie Ellis, 915 Southeast Street. This is probably at least the third administration that has asked about reducing the tax credit on out-of-town workers. Like Lisa said, I work out of town, my husband works out of town. I pay other cities income tax, not because I want to, but that's because that's what they make me do. But I'm also not here, if I work 8 hours a day with a half-hour unpaid lunch and 40 minutes travel time one way, 10 hours roughly a day, not here, not using city services, right? But you want to eliminate or reduce the credit, yet I don't use them for those hours that I'm not here in the city. And I think that, the thing comes back to, you said the expenses for the police, fire, and ambulance went up 1.2 million. Well, we didn't have the ambulance service prior to that, so you can't say, oh, our expenses are 1.2 million more than 2017, right? You can't, you gotta take out the ambulance, and what's the difference between 17 with fire and police then and now? And the ambulance is something totally, you can't even look at saying we're 1.2 million more. Because again, you can't compare apples to oranges. And we do that a lot here. Things come up and it's apples to oranges. And Dan, I think you said annexation, that's been talked about, we sit on our hands and nothing gets done. And the mayor, I listened to the finance committee and I listened to him tell Brenton Potter or whatever, and well, go out and do it. If you want to do it, go out and, meet with Timken or, wait a minute, what, he's the mayor, and like you said, Dan, what are we doing? He should be leading the charge for that. And yes, you're right, it shouldn't be, oh, well, do you want to annex? How much does the subdivision across from Timken pay for their city services? They pay the water fee that I pay.
That
But
doesn't
if-
go to the services.
But I'm saying their water service and the street, who plows their street? Okay, but they get our water, so when the water happens and there's a water break, who fixes it? The city.
We do.
And they're paying the same rate that I am, but like you said, Dan, if something's gonna happen, they need to lose services. Actually, they should be paying more for their services. They aren't paying anything above what their water bill costs them every month. And Joyce wants to say skin in the game. Well, where's the skin in the game for the people that are getting city services that aren't paying to the city of Bucyrus? They need to get their skin in the game too. So I think that, this has happened, and this didn't just, this financial emergency didn't just drop in the lap. I mean, a few months ago. I mean, the writing, is on the wall, and it's been on the wall, and, you want to reduce the credit. And like I said, I don't have any problem if it's 0.25% but you're wanting to eliminate, but you don't have a plan. And like, I like Kevin and I like Dan, you say, we need a plan. We're not, it's not gonna be permanent. We can't do things, you can't, and no, I don't wanna see the seniors pay more. I don't wanna see my mother who's on a fixed income. So, like Lisa said, property tax is probably not the way to go. And I think it's an explanation to those senior citizens and to the community, if you don't pay city taxes, so this isn't going to affect your bottom dollar, but it's going to raise more money. And I do think it needs to go directly where it needs to go. The general fund needs to be out. And there should be no reason that the mayor's spending $50,000 without your stamp on it. I mean, I don't know how many of you have a significant other, but would you go out and spend $999.99 without having a discussion with your significant other first? I wouldn't spend $1,000, willy-nilly 50 times a year without talking to my husband. So why are we allowing him to spend $49,999 without you guys and it being approved? I mean, we need to look at, and the citizens need to know, yeah, I can go and ask for something, but it should be pretty public, and it should be going through the people that we're electing to spend our money, to know that know what's going on and how that money is being spent before it's spent, not after it's spent. I mean, so I think you guys need to look at that, but continuing to talk about let's annex or let's do this or let's do that, but let's go after the fast money, and that's getting these people that work out of town. And I mean, and Mr. Taylor said, the police aren't just leaving for money or whatever, but let's face it, if I and I left town for more money, I'd much rather stay here and work. Who wouldn't? I used to drive 5 minutes from home. But when it was $8 more an hour, I'm gonna go $8 more an hour and leave. I liked 5 minutes from home. I could go home at lunchtime, I could let the dog out. But it's time that you guys start thinking about it and not just let's go after the fast money, and let's, look at it long-term and with conditions and specific conditions, because you can't keep hurting the people, just because we leave to go out of town to work. Everybody uses the services. Everybody should be paying for those services. Like I said, I'll pay the 0.25%, but it affects both my husband and myself. That's a lot of money, and don't talk about, just go buy a cup of, will you spend that much at Starbucks? No, I don't, because I can't afford to spend that much for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. I make it at home. So you guys got to quit looking at those analogies and thinking, well, people just spend that. No. I mean, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people have tightened their belts, and letting people spend $49,999.99 without your knowledge isn't great financial oversight of all of our tax dollars.
Right, and I'm going to stop you right there, because I'd like to clarify that, and we're about to get into it now. We get into the budget every year, and we lay out where all this money's going. You would be, I don't know, how many categories are there, altogether? I don't know. Thousands. 118 pages. So, just so the world knows that council is not letting the mayor and Joyce just spend almost $50,000. And we know where all that's going January 1st, right? And then all year long, we're moving this money from there and this money from there. And Joyce is always giving us the why we're moving it. The mayor and safety service director is always saying, you know, this project went over budget. We're going to move the money that you put in here, the budget from the budget last year. We're going to move this from here to there. And so nobody really, the reason that I don't know when did, it went from 25,000 to 50,000 at some point, was just because if it's in there and say, I don't know, the police car needed a new something, or, you know, then if it's in the budget for a new truck, okay, and it's $25,000, then they can go get the truck without bringing it all the way back to, but we've already budgeted that money. We already know that that's where that 25,000 is gonna go, so.
And we've approved that budget.
And
I
we've
guess is what I'm
approved
saying.
the budget, yeah,
But
so.
then you're moving it, wherever it, I mean, the money's already been spent though on the item, and now we gotta come back and, well, we gotta move this money because
Any
we
money that's
spent it.
moved goes through
It hasn't
council
been
meeting.
spent before it's moved. It has to be approved. It has to go through council. Appropriations have to change. They have to approve any transfer from one category to another. We had some situations where street projects increased due to supply chain issues and all of that. We had budgeted, say, for example, in the street fund, we had planned on buying several new pieces of equipment. Turns out it was not available. So that money, instead of being spent for those vehicles and pieces of equipment, part of it went to pay for increased cost in projects. The rest of it is being removed from the budget. It was not spent. I just put in a appropriation reduction for $373,000 in the street fund because we did not spend it, and I need to bring, you know, numbers into alignment for the end of the
So,
year.
yeah, so the point I wanted to make was, you know, I've been out, I do it too. I'd say, oh, you know, the state or the federal government is just blowing this money, you know, they don't know what they're doing. But we try to keep a pretty close eye on it. And I know just from being in this position that the money is being moved properly, and then every year Joyce is audited by the state. They come down and audit her, and just about every year she gets a plaque for doing a fine,
Well, I'm not saying that
great
she
job.
doesn't
Oh,
do
no.
a great job at
But I
what
mean,
she
it's-
does.
it's all
I
of
mean,
us to-
she's- Like I said, I see in the paper she gets those awards. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that she's not, but I think it's about the money being spent and the money being appropriated. And, you know, I know they said, you know, the Bicentennial Park isn't being funded by the city, but Kelly Patterson is a chairperson or something of that nature, and are her hours that she's working during the day being spent on the Bicentennial Park project?
I'm assuming she's not being paid to work on that.
But that's an assumption, but when you see her out and about and it's during the workday and she's photo-opped and whatnot, I mean,
I don't know. Yes, I understand, but
and I hear you over there under your breath, or somebody over there under your breath. I guess my thing of it is perception. People perceive things, and so, you know, if you don't want the perception out there, then you need to be very transparent about what's going on. And maybe Kelly was always off the clock, but the perception is if she works during the day from 8 to 4 and she's at a park something or rather, then is she she's at work. I
Right.
mean, that's
Well,
city
and
tax
that's,
dollars.
I-
I mean,
you know,
and
that's
that's
the-
just, I mean, I'm just saying, because I know that was brought up in the last finance committee, because it was, and I know Joyce said people don't understand, that's not our dollar, our tax dollars. So I think it's perception and people's perception of what they see. So I think that's something that has to be kept in mind. It's
Right.
perception as well. I mean, I don't envy you guys making decisions, but decisions need to be made. And the annexation is something that should have been done many, many, many moons ago. And we still sit here, you know, another month later, another month later, another month later. And, you know, Dan, I like what you said. It's not, do you want to? It's, here's your options.
Right.
It's a yes, you do, or you're going to pay more for the services that you're getting because we don't have the money. And we
Right.
can't continue to charge the people that live here and have to work out of town more money when you're getting services and aren't paying any money to us. So,
Right. I think we all realize.
You mentioned that you were gone from your house 8 hours a day. If your house catches on fire when you're gone, who's gonna put it out?
well, it depends on if somebody calls to let the fire department
Well,
know
they
that
would,
it's on
and
fire.
they'd be there and putting it out. I mean, you
Well,
can't
that's if
say
somebody
just because you're not there.
Somebody calls them.
Yeah.
I mean, then
I
yeah, they
mean,
would be.
yeah.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that but I don't want my money to, if the safety forces is where the money needs to
Yeah,
go,
okay,
and
I
that's
agree
where
with
it
that.
sounds
I
like
agree
it
with
needs to go, then not one dime of my reduction of money should go to the general fund. It should all go to the police and fire where that's where the shortcoming is.
I agree.
So, but yeah, if my house catches on fire, then yeah, I'd hope the fire department comes, but, you know, I'm not there for the ambulance service and, you know, I mean, if I'm not home, if somebody breaks in, then yes, I may have to call the police, but, you know, I'm also not there to utilize the ambulance service while I'm gone. I'm not there to
Okay.
utilize some of those other services.
It's
So-
fair to point out by law, though, the reduction, 1% would go to the general fund, 0.5% to the safety forces levy, and 0.5% to the street levy because of the way that our income tax is set up. So we can't make that change, just so that's clear.
And that can't be,
No.
that's an ordinance or a
That's-
state law? Okay. Well, like I said, then maybe you need to look at what do we do for the safety forces? That's where the money needs to be. So if it's the 1.5% increase, then maybe it's the 1.5% increase to the fire and safety
Absolutely.
like that versus.
That's where
Yes,
we've all
yes,
stated we believe that.
Versus the other where the reduction's gonna go to the general fund,
Yeah.
where that's not where the money is needed.
Yeah, we've all stated that's our opinion on that.
Yeah, so,
Okay, thanks.
You want to have her go to the podium?
Go to the podium, please.
Can you come up here?
I just wondered, I had also asked if they had any idea how much income would be coming in from Shelter Works or any of, because they've been opening in business. Actually, they've hired quite a few of the GE employees. And I just wondered if you guys were going to have any tax information to see,
We
to
wouldn't
maybe
know
cover
till
the
they file
losses.
their returns. We wouldn't
Well,
know till
that's
they file their
what you're
returns,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it'd be the following year.
What's 2% of what they make if they live in town?
Yeah, but you're not,
So
they
much
wouldn't be a
year.
full year this year.
I know we've given them quite a bit of business. So,
The mayor would like to say something, then.
We had discussions, many discussions on annexation. This isn't the first one, but, and Mr. Gerner is, told about the legal issues that we're going to have with annexation. And, so in relation to, mentioning to council to go ask them, I said that because I've asked the last 3 Timken managers, each one of them, if they would be open to annexation. Each one of them said, in a nice way, no, I won't repeat, some of the, so I've tried, I've actually, and if it's another issue with taxation, you're in Whetstone Township, you have to negotiate with them where the taxes go. It's not just, okay, we're taking Timken and we get all the taxes. It's a lot more complicated than that. The second thing I want to say is when Ms. Ellis was saying about the increase, that actually was net, not gross. So we said they're up $1 million. That's taken into account the revenue that we already had. So, and then Dan, I think he did a pretty good job. The mayor just doesn't spend $49,999. That's all done by approved budget. I sign the legislation of the approved budget, but council votes on it, so if it's in the budget, I can't just, it's just, that isn't the way it works, so I think Dan did a pretty good job explaining that, so we don't waste money here, we really don't.
All right, I
The
think
budgets are all open.
This gentleman here was next.
I real quick wanted to say, I'm Doug Huff, I live on West Center Street, that I support the safety forces and whatever we need to do to keep the manpower where it needs to be, because I think a lot of us in this room, if we make that call and need them, we want them to be there. Not that we don't have guys, officers or firemen to cover shifts, we want them to be there when we call them. So I just want to pledge my support for them.
Okay, I think we all do, thanks.
You
Yes.
were talking about on annexation. If you want to look at it, it's in section 19 of the Ohio, in the Ohio Revised Code, section 709. On 709.19, it goes through a whole series of how many years it takes before the money would come to the city. It takes up to 13 years before the majority of the money would come to the city from the township. So that's not going to be a quick financial answer. I'm just saying, just to let everybody know, the Ohio Revised Code shows how it's got to go, and it's a very lengthy procedure and process, and I want to do the annexation, but it's also, you got to get the people to vote for it, because you can't just annex them and so forth.
You guys gotta go up to the podium.
They're no longer paying out-of-town water rates, am I correct?
That's correct.
So we've lost our bargaining chip as far as saying to those houses out of Timken, hey, if we annex you in, we're gonna lower your water rate down to what everybody in town's paying. Am I right?
Some of the problem, and I don't know exactly why that was done, but you can't profit off of water.
Well, this town's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, but it all has to stay in the water fund. It's not like you can bill water and then
Right.
transfer it to the general fund to pay.
I meant as a bargaining.
I get that, absolutely, but it's not like that we can go jack up the water rates and then transfer it to the fire department. I think that the landlords and I had that conversation a couple months ago.
Name and address?
Kurt Fankhauser, 616 Prospect. The annexation was brought up when I was council president, and I actually went to Whetstone Township for city council to ask them if they were willing to let some of their township be annexed to the city. They said absolutely not. So just from what I've kind of seen being on city council, the only time you have a bargaining point with a township to get part of that annexed is when they want a service from the city like the water or the sewer. Once you hook those up, you're not going to get them to agree to annex. The whole Timken subdivision already has all of that. They're not going to annex so they can pay more taxes. Now, from listening to Rob Ratliff when he was up here, it sounded like years ago when those services were ran, there should have been something recorded on the property deed that said once you become contiguous to the city at some point, because you can't make an island, so like let's say you did run water out there back then, but there was no abutting city-owned or city corporation limits, once they would, something else would join and then they would automatically join. That was never done. We've totally lost our shot at that, so I don't even know why you guys are thinking about it, unless people voluntarily want to annex to pay taxes. The other question I have for Joyce, are you still planning on retiring at the end of this year?
I'm caregiver now.
Is,
I have to.
is somebody else been trained yet for your job? So I see a huge problem here where, you know, we're gonna lose Joyce, the finances. Are you planning on staying as,
Trying to recruit, and quite bluntly, people don't like, the politics. They don't wanna sit up here and listen to, you know, everything that transpires. The other thing is it doesn't pay enough.
are you willing to stay on part-time or something after, like, somebody
I
did
will
get?
be available to help and train someone.
Are you gonna do that for free, or are we gonna have to pay you for that?
That remains to be seen. I'm not, I can't come in as an employee. And I would also feel very comfortable, we should call on local government services from the state auditor's office to come in and help train a new person and make sure they're trained properly. And they will do that. I don't know how far removed I'm gonna have to be. I don't know what's in my future after December 31st. But I'm sitting here thinking right now, I really need to leave because I am a caregiver now. So,
So we could end up being in fiscal emergency within 12 months of you leaving.
hopefully not, but it's a possibility. It's
Um,
not the way I wanted it to be, but like I say, we've gone through several possible candidates and they came back and said no.
Well, that's unfortunate. I was unaware that everybody had said no. I thought maybe there was at least one.
I was hoping.
And then the funding for police and fire, I'm all for that. If there's a way that that can be funded without any money going to the general fund, just like the previous speaker talked, because that's my biggest thing, is I don't want to see any more money going to the general fund. I want to see it all go to the police and fire, and I also don't want to see money get robbed from the police and fire on the back end, because that has happened in the past. And something I thought of that could possibly be a solution to that, the 1%, the first 1% of income tax doesn't have to be voted on by the residents. It's something in the Ohio Revised Code. The city council can put that first 1% on, which pretty much every city in Ohio has. They've done it because they can. They don't even have to get the voters to approve it. I'm wondering, can we voluntarily rescind a portion of that and at the same time put on a ballot on the levy for police and fire only, so that if the voters approved that, that would all go to police and fire, and then you could back off on that first 1%, whatever it would equal out to, so that basically none of the police and fire funding was ever coming from general fund. It would always be a specific levy, so that the money can't be moved around, is basically what I'm saying. That's just something I'm planting out there. I don't know if it's even possible, but the way I see it, as long as any portion of police and fire is coming out of the general fund, they can always be, any future council could finagle the numbers and, yeah, we're gonna pass a levy for you, but, we'll kind of pull back on that general fund, and then next thing you know, we're back to where we were before. So, and there is waste going on in the general fund. The art park cameras down there that I had donated for free, the current administration paid for new cameras to come in, and as far as I know from talking to the police department, they never had any issue getting any of the footage off of the donated cameras, so I'm wondering why this year waste was happening and unnecessary spending. So you guys got a little bit more you need to be cutting back on general fund before you even can think about putting a levy on.
Well, we thank you for your opinion.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, my name is Dale Wolf. I live out on Noss Road. Was employed with the city police department for 25 years. Retired in 2005, and I've worked with the sheriff's office for 11 years. In that time, I paid city income taxes, okay, though I didn't live out in the city after 1993. So I understand paying taxes for things that you don't really get to use, and I understand paying someplace else, not paying here for the services you're getting here. If anything, I would have a problem with the ones that are charging the people that don't live there the taxes.
If we could figure a way to.
Right,
change
exactly,
that.
exactly, I agree.
Why do I pay taxes to Mansfield City
I agree.
and not to the city I live, you know, that should be the way it should be.
I agree, but we can't change that, unfortunately. The couple things that I've seen tonight is I've seen a lot of people out here and up here really saying a lot of the same things. You have the same goals. You don't want to see police and fire suffer. I was here in 1992 and the early 90s when we had layoffs. I was one of two officers out in our south lot when we had 150 people fighting out there at 3 o'clock in the morning because everybody left the Crazy Fox and the Horseshoe, and the Mad Bull. They'd meet at Hardee's because it was open, and then you'd have fights. Two of us standing out there with that many people. And there was nothing you could really do until you got a couple of extra guys, and then it was a matter of going in and grabbing somebody, dragging them out, and keep going. I don't want to see that happen again. Because I tell you what, the people today are different than they were back then. I could go into a bar in the 80s and 90s, and I knew there was at least 2 or 3 or 4 guys in there that would back me up. That other than they knew I was a good guy and I treated them fairly, that was why they were willing to keep somebody from coming up my back. And I don't think it's that way anymore. I know over the last several years I worked security at the courthouse, the last 11 years, and people are meaner. They don't have the tolerance. They're willing to challenge you. They're willing to fight you. We had it back in the day, but it was usually because they were drunk. Now they're stone cold sober and willing to do it. And we didn't have the drug problems that you have now. You absolutely cannot go back to the days of limited manpower on police or fire. And you know that. You all know that. So I've heard several different ways that you may be able to come up with some extra income. The tax thing is one. Okay? And I'm hearing that nobody here is really opposed to additional income tax as long as it's across the board. Joyce, do you know when that would have to be filed, a levy proposal would have to be filed through the Board of Elections?
I believe it has to be in 90 days. before
90
the
days prior to
actual
the election?
Day. Yeah, I believe so.
Do we have to have that do the primary or to the actual election in November?
You can take
You
it
can
to
do
the
it to a primary.
Yeah, there's 3 possibilities.
Three
So it'd have to be
possibilities.
like
You can do the
February.
primary, you can do the general, or you can do a special. But the special will cost you more.
Yeah. The special cost is distributed between everybody that's on the levy, or everybody that's on the ballot that time. So what I would challenge you folks to do is make a plan between now and the end of January. So that if that's the way you're going to go, get it on the first available ballot, because it's going to be a while before you can collect it. None of this is going to help tomorrow. You're going to about have to do some of the reductions. And I know that you're already working on that. This is a great city. I hate to see it go down the tubes, but I know for many, many years, we went to places like Crestline. We went to smaller agencies all over, and we'd get their guys because we could pay more. And we'd get people with experience, or at least some. Now, Marion's doing it to us. Delaware's doing it to us. You got good people here. My son's one of them. I'm proud that he's here. But I tell you what, you don't want to lose people like that. And I've talked to Neil, and he has every intention and every desire to get as many local people as he can, because you've got a stake in this community. I would hope that the council and the mayor will get together here in the next month and try to get a plan worked out and present a plan so that the people that are upset over this know that you are working on it. Not just, you know, I hear you, but, you know, what can we do? Get a plan together and then present it. I know you can do it because you want to. You really do. And that's what they want. That's all I have. Thank you. I'm one of the senior citizens now, so.
Thanks, Theo.
Thank you, Teal.
Yeah.
Would it be fair for our next committee meetings on Thursday of next week to ask for you guys to kind of bring us a comprehensive plan of exactly what you think we need to do reduction-wise and exactly what you think we need to do for a levy?
I emailed every one of you guys my recommendations. There it was, so.
I'm talking about an entire plan.
I don't know.
Okay.
I told you.
He already did it.
I already presented
Yeah.
any other thoughts, at a conclusion in my recommendations for you here.
And what would that be?
Can you hear it?
Can we hear it? Other than just to reduce the tax credit that gets the fast money.
In my opinion, you know, you could reduce the tax credit. I wanted to work with council because they're obviously gonna be the ones that vote on it. I don't get a vote on it. I think you have to look at reducing the tax credit because that's something that can be done and it's gonna guarantee us some income.
And what percent reduction are you suggesting?
That would be up to you.
That's my point.
Okay.
I would like to hear what your recommendation.
I would
for
recommend
plans.
reducing it by half,
Okay.
okay?
And then I also like to know what your recommendation would be for what we would look at on an income tax.
You brought up the idea of an income tax. I think, I think if you do an income tax, 2.25, you mentioned 3, I think that's not gonna have a chance. I think 2.25 would have a chance of passing. And then I would also put a property tax levy for equipment on the ballot.
At the same time or at a later date?
I would put it at the same time, because you're talking about really 2 years almost before you start collecting anything,
Yeah.
so. So I would put them both on. But the first thing,
And so you're saying for the income tax, an additional half or 1/4%?
1/4%, and then if that passes, then you can make a decision to vote to reduce it, go back to the full credit or whatever that's your decision after that, so.
And then for the property tax for equipment, what's your recommendation for a
Well,
millage for that?
I think you're gonna need about, you're gonna need probably, I don't know how many mills that would be, we'd have to get with the county auditor, but
We've got that right here.
Okay, if you're, 2 ambulances probably gonna, by that time, gonna cost about $800,000. So if you're bringing 80,000 a year, that doesn't even include any, so you're gonna need, I think, about 100,000 a year.
Yeah, like-
It was 181,000 at 1 mil.
On 1 mil, so a half a mil would bring in about 100,000.
Well, and to the point I made earlier, I think we need to be more proactive about knowing that if we're gonna buy a new ladder truck with a life
Yeah.
expectancy of 20 years, I'd like to generate 1/20th of that year. And the same thing, if a life expectancy of an ambulance is 6 years, I wanna generate 1/6 of that.
Let me
all the way.
put those
So,
numbers, then we
yeah,
can fine tune that.
Between
so.
both departments.
We'll
I'd
get
like
the
to put all
costs
that
of,
together and have that's the kind of stuff we need to make a decision.
okay. We'll get the costs of the equipment, and, because we have been funding police cars out of the budget so far.
Yeah.
We've been doing okay with that,
But I think it'd be a lot easier on all of us if we didn't have to do that anymore. It'd be nice if we had that line item to where,
That money could go to
Okay.
them.
Those
Yes.
police cars were bought with grant money.
the last ones
The
were.
last ones, yeah. The first ones, we
The first ones came from the levy.
Who works on grants for the city?
they
I'm getting
have,
grants.
they have someone now, right?
Yeah, we all work, we get grants, we have grants that we've received. We just received $850,000 for from H2 Ohio. We're applying for grants for improvements for a wastewater treatment plant, which we'll be discussing here in the next month. We're going to apply for safety, excuse me, Chief, what, I can't remember. Safer
funds and the
Safer
FG.
level. Yeah, we're gonna be applying for that after the first year.
And we've done,
Yeah.
We don't have one
done-
individual.
We don't
No,
have anybody hired to do that.
So we've done it both ways. We've done them individually. I've got some guys that are actually have some training in it and stuff that we do some individually, and then we've also paid somebody to do them in the past also. So.
Aaron, you ready?
Yeah. Aaron Sherrick, 1485 Oak Ridge Drive, Bucyrus, Ohio. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I know I'm getting ripped because I'm told that it's the council's job to vote and approve wages and freezes, and so this can't be done. But oddly, we are the council, so we can, when we go to vote on those wages, lower some wages. We can freeze wages. And I'm going to say right now, we've got to do it. We're in crisis or heading towards crisis, and we're still expecting to get more and more money to be here while we're not, we're expecting everybody else to give. And we've got people who think that they should just take. And unfortunately, the fire and the police, they need that money. Those are the people protecting the community. We're just helping run it. And every one of us stepped up to do this. We all put our name in to have the people vote for us. We're the ones that need to step up and say, and I concede, and I don't want to take more than I have to either. So just a reminder that could definitely go into where can we cut.
Right, so you're suggesting to cut council and auditors.
We got to watch the auditor because we
just
can't even
heard.
hire one.
We just
But-
heard, we can't hire
But we've got
one.
council, we've got mayor, we've got people authorizing wage increases for wages that didn't need to be increased.
I don't know, I sat here along with your mom, and we sat here for years and never
We sat here and we
took.
hired somebody and we increased their wage in front of everybody else. It was okay. It was already accepted to go for where we started, but we had to increase that immediately. We didn't have to. We just said we were short on funds.
I'm sure if, I don't know who you're talking about, but I'm sure if we did that, it was to retain them or to,
No, we just hired them. I said no. It had nothing to do with the person. It had to do with that suddenly being put on. That, it had been agreed upon. If I shake your hand and say that I'll take $6 an hour, I'm not going to expect you to suddenly pay me $8. You see what I'm saying? I understand those are ridiculous numbers, but we don't need to just suddenly up wages. There are wages we can cut, not the auditor. But us, we can cut what we pay the mayor. Gallion's mayor makes less. I mean, right now, we're losing jobs. We're losing income, and we're losing people. And people will move away if they don't see a future here. And I want them to see a future here. And I want them to know that we're all in it with them. We're not above it.
yeah, I don't disagree, Aaron, but what I'm saying is, so you make $25 a meeting, okay? You can be a councilman for $25 a meeting. Who do you think we're going to get up here,
Do you know how many people have
I
run?
didn't even know they were paid when I ran.
Most
I didn't think I
people
would
get paid
either.
when they run.
If you're in government for the money, you're in for the wrong reason.
I'm just saying,
Amen.
I would, you know, you're not paying me enough to do this now, but I'm here. You guys know that. Anybody that's been up here knows that. And I'm just saying, you know, you start cutting mayor's salary, you start cutting auditor's salary. No, you don't want to cut the auditor's salary now because you know you can't get one. What?
Might have been, maybe not cut, but freeze for a moment, until things are on
I
a more
know.
stable level.
I completely understand, but I'm a firm believer in you get what you pay for. So, wow. Well, that's the other thing. Someone made a comment, and I didn't get to comment on that about the money going here and there, and don't, you know, all the money should go to these monies go to the police. Now, as a community, if we're out there voting, and you're voting, and then you don't trust the mayor, or you don't trust the auditor, or you don't trust the council, then you guys aren't voting right, you know? And I'm just saying,
If we don't trust government, means we're not voting right? That's what you're saying?
you better vote somebody
Well,
who,
Dan, really honestly what it is too, when we feel like, or at least, I shouldn't say that, I feel like, every time he needs more money, it is police and fire, it is police and fire. So I'm just saying, I have no problem paying more money. I support our police and fire. However, I do not support wastefulness in other areas. Maybe I was unclear, but he does use the police and fire as a scare tactic. I support you both, I still want to say that. And he's done it, so he asked for
we
that
all do
response.
that. We all do that, but.
And I guess the voting, when you vote and you vote city council, I can only vote for my ward and the council at large. So there's other voting members of the council that I got no say in. So I can't vote for those folks. So I think that needs to be kind of retracted because that's not
Yes, my point
necessarily
is,
the truth.
if you vote for people and then, which I see this happen all the time here, you vote for people and then you don't like what they're doing. Well, then run, or vote for someone else.
I tried that.
Wow. All right, let's move on to.
I do have a question. If I want a public records request of emails, for the administrative assistant with the bicentennial park and every email that was sent from her city email, is that something I can ask for here?
You have to submit a request for that.
Okay, and who do I submit that to?
You can send it to me.
Okay,
I'll get you my stuff afterwards.
okay.
I just have a question, is anyone, whether it's the mayor or city council, if we petition the state or any of our state representatives for maybe, and I know this is long-term too, increasing the state sales tax to open up some room that the county hasn't eaten up. Obviously, the state's 5.75%, the county's 1.5%, there's no sales tax for the city. The city can collect sales tax, there's just no room under state law right now, because 7.25 is the max, and the county's eating up what's left, the state's not taking. And has anybody petitioned the state from this council?
We haven't.
About retrieving some of the money that your residents are being taxed in other cities. Now, I know the Supreme Court of Ohio has already made a ruling on that, but that ruling's based on current law. And have we petitioned Bill Reineke or the kid from Upper, I can't even think of his name right now. Riordan, have we petitioned our representation to change that legislation at all?
Yeah, does the administration have an answer for that or not?
We have done, we have been petitioning for an increase in local government funds through
Robert, I don't know if you can hear him, he says yes, they have.
Yeah, we have, and then also.
I'm not trying to call anybody out, I'm just asking.
And also through Ohio Municipal League too,
and they work with the Ohio Municipal League that has a lot of, they. Okay.
Are we ready yet to schedule the further budget meetings? I had asked about that the last time we met, and you didn't quite have an answer.
We're not quite ready. We will be in the next, probably, we're working on this week and tomorrow. Thursday.
Okay, any final questions? Let's try to, if it's, all right, Kurt, one more time.
Will any proposed levy be put on the ballot as a permanent levy or something?
Don't know.
No.
Not, I won't vote for a permanent
You got
levy.
2 no's and 1 shoulder shrug, so I'm gonna say
What?
no.
Well, I'm just saying, how can, we haven't even discussed it yet, how would we know,
I
you know?
appreciate
That's what I'm saying.
No, I ran solely because I did not like a permanent levy.
I will
That's
never
what
vote
was
for
the
one.
safety forces levy, and I ran against.
I think though you guys are getting the short end of the stick
You are.
here,
You are.
because one of the people that are responsible for part of this and is a person that doesn't seem to me in the meetings and things that I've watched, that wants to step out and do anything, he wants to put it all back on you, walk out the door, just like keeps saying, oh, I'm gonna be leaving, I'm gonna be leaving, I'm gonna be leaving.
We're aware of that, or I am at
So,
least.
it's sad that that's the state that we're in,
16
and
months ago, you wanted $50,000 Parks Director.
exactly. I mean, so,
Okay, so there was some other things on the agenda, but I think we covered all that, didn't we?
I think
Okay, so I think we've kind of beat this horse. Don't call PETA on me, but.
Thanks for actually giving us some input. I appreciate that.
So, and any of you out in TV land, I guess, do we have TV today? Oh, okay. Well, I hadn't seen it. But if you have questions or concerns or anything, email your council person. Call. Carrier pigeon, I don't care, however, but, so can I get a motion? Do we want to do anything? Oh, we're going to have another meeting, right? Was that our decision, kind of? Okay.
You don't have no motion.
Okay, well, I'll adjourn at whatever that is. 7:47, okay.